just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. On December the 14th, 2018. This is Friday Java, beaming to you from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Old Boston Red here himself from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. We've got all of everything out of the way. We have the people from the University of Virginia, the local white supremacist there was convicted in the murder of Heber Heyer, and we always remember Heber Heyer when we talk about the University of Virginia, and of course that's Larry Sabato's shop. To be precise, it's the University of Virginia Center for Politics, called the Crystal Ball. We also have the people from the Emerson College in Boston. Their poll, a very good poll. We'll look at sport, soccer, hockey, and basketball. The Blue Dog, a Democrat. An interesting species of a person, and the saying farewell to Nancy Wilson, the jazz singer out there. And let me just check one other thing here. Well, this is France. We'll talk about that later here, but let's go back to Larry Sabato. We'll start there. The 2020 Senate race. Republican exposure on paper, but not necessarily in practice. Republicans are defending a lot of turf, but much of it is dark red. This is by Carl Klondike. He's the managing editor of the Crystal Ball. His points here are the 34th seat race on the ballot in 2020. Republicans already control 22 of them, while Democrats held only 12. That represents something of a role reversal from 2018, when Democrats had to defend 26 seats of the 35. Still, Republicans start the cycle, favored to hold the Senate, but there's a plausible path for the Democrats. Well, we'll get into that in a minute here. Doug Jones, he's in Alabama. He won a seat
there. It's a red state. And Cory Gardner, who is in Colorado. And a special election in Arizona also starts as a toss-up. So we'll get into that. I think that's the one Mr. Kyle has of John McCain. Republicans netted 2 seats overall, boosting their majority from 51 to 53. That'll be in the new Senate. Will convene next year. Overall, the 2018 results brought the Senate map from into partisan alignment. Going into the election, only 15 senators out of 100 represented states that their party's presidential candidate lost in 2016. And that's a very interesting situation there. Of the 15, 11 were on the ballot in 2008. The results reduced the total number of crossover senators by 4 to just 11 total. Republicans captured 4 Democrat-held seats that DJ Trump won. That was in Florida, stolen there, Indiana, Missouri, and in North Dakota. Well, North Dakota had always been a very tenuous state to begin with, and Missouri has been back and forth since the days of Senator Callahan, who was killed in a plane crash, and his wife took the place. The only Republican-held seat that was contested in a state that Hillary Clinton won was Nevada. Democrats also captured a seat in Arizona, and a Trump state he won, but barely won there. Meanwhile, Trump state Democrats won re-election in Michigan, Montana, Ohio, that is Mr. Brown. Pennsylvania has returned to being a command and control state. And, of course, West Virginia, Senator Meacham, as long as he's there, he will get reelected. Sort of like Senator Byrd. And in Wisconsin. So these are some of the red states, just looking at them here. They call Montana purple, but nonetheless, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and let's see who we're missing here. The North and South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida are the red states. The 34 state seats that are being contested in 2020, 33 regularly scheduled elections, along with a special election in Arizona. That would be the remaining 2-year term of the late Senator McCain. Alabama, Minnesota, and Mississippi were on the ballot in the special elections in the cycle. Doug Jones will be out there, and Tina Smith, she's in Minnesota. And the racist Cindy Hyde-Smith will be back there for a full 6 years of her situation. Current party control of Senate seats on the ballot in 2020. The Democrats have 12, the Republicans have 22. But of that 22, a lot of these states are in the South. In Texas, they're wondering what will be going on there. Alaska, I didn't know Alaska was up again. But the Democrats have to net at least 3 seats in the cycle, meaning that it's hard to imagine Republicans holding the White House while simultaneously losing 4 Senate seats. Well, what the crystal ball thinks here, they have it set up as, 46 Democrats and 52 Republicans, minus 2. They have 3 that are toss-ups. He's in Colorado and in Alabama, and also the special election in Arizona. Arizona has been trending more Democrat there. That'll be an interesting one to see where they go in Arizona. A little different there. The blue states like Minnesota and Michigan, you don't expect much to happen there. And states that have no elections like Wisconsin, Indiana, Missouri, it's all over there. Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio. And we go out west to Utah, Nevada, and California. They've already done it there. In Washington State. In Oregon, there's a Senate race in Oregon. Meanwhile, 7 of the 12 current Democratic Senate seats start as safe Democrat in Delaware, Illinois, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Rhode Island. So that means that 20 of the 24 seats on the ballot in 2020 are rated as safe for the incumbent party. So in other words, there's not very much action there. They go to Alabama, which is traditionally a red state. That is Doug Jones. And Doug Jones has been a more cautious type of person there. To see exactly where that ends up. Now, old Beauregard Session himself may run to get his seat back. That was his seat in Alabama. The Democrats started at least small favorites in 4 of plausible targets. That's in Michigan. Garrett Peters in Michigan, in our opinion, has a very good chance of retaining his seat. An open race in, former Michigan Secretary of State. I'm not sure much about him there. Trump's very narrow. Forget about that. There's Debbie Stabenow turned a relatively weak 6.5 in her re-election, holding there. But it was kind of interesting. She ran against an unknown character named John James. He was a veteran, an African American that ran a strong race in Michigan for not being very well known. But he didn't get a cigar, so he can forget that one right there. Jean Sheehan, she's in New Hampshire. Will she seek a 3rd term? Probably so. Old Kelly Ayotte, I remember her. She lost in 216s, another familiar Republican. That's in the Granite State there. Not sure if she'll mount anything or not. Let's start in the Centennial State. That is in Colorado. Well, Gardner is moving, was one of those people that was lucky. He won by 2 points over Mark Udall in a strong Republican environment. That was in 2014, and some of that was caused by these Tea Party elements, and of course Barack Obama was in the president's chair. Had a lot to do with what was going on. But remember that no state voted differently for president and Senate in 2016. Very interesting there. To see where it's going. As Christina Duran. Let's see. Gardner's in real trouble. Yeah, no doubt about that. Gardner will probably be defeated if they get a decent candidate out there. Former Treasurer Corey Kennedy and somebody named Mike Johnston. And they got John Hickenlooper. He used to be the governor out of Denver. Will take a shot at running. Well, forget about that. He's not running for president any more than I am. In Arizona, that's John Kyle there. He had been the senator. He's just a cutout there. He'd already retired, in 2013. He's back, assuming Kyle leaves soon. Ducey will appoint another temporary senator. The appointee would seek the office, but remember that appointed incumbents don't necessarily confer advantage there. Well, that's true there. One appointee is outgoing Representative Martha McSally. Some of the people talked about that. Kristen Sinema beat her in November. There's some dispute as to whether Ducey would prefer to nominate someone else, like for now, former chief of staff. I'm not sure who that is. Somebody named Adams. Anyway, the late August primary could put a party nominee behind the eight ball. Excuse me, in Arizona, as arguably happened to McSally's late primary there. Well, McSally was granted to lose anyway. There were some last-minute ads against Sinema. Because Sinema had actually been a Green at one time, but it didn't affect the outcome as much as one would have thought. They thought Sinema was, as they say, dead in the proverbial road. Did not happen. So whichever candidate wins, that's will have to run again in 22. Now, additional Republican-held seats is lean in our rating. Susan Collin. I thought Susan Collin was. She deserves to be defeated, no doubt about it. Clinton won the state there. Well, Gardner, we already know about what happened with him. And assuming the incumbent lean Republican states, Democrats' best target is probably Thor Tillis. He's in North Carolina. North Carolina has been trending there. Kate Huggin, each have failed attempt to win second terms. That's Elizabeth Dole. She's in the past tense there. And let's get to the conclusion here. Overall, in order to win the Senate, Democrats would need to win Arizona. They could win Colorado and at least a couple of lean Republican states. A little hard to do there. Don't know what happened in Iowa. North Carolina is the best hope there. In Georgia, don't know. So much thievery going on in the state of Georgia. Let me just get the Blue Dog Democrats in here while we are segueing over. This is from the Washington Post. And this is one of the things that corporate America is able to do, is bring these so-called Blue Dog, Clinton Democrats, whatever you want to call them, into the mixture. And this is on the 13th. Democratic Party spent enormous amounts of time and money recruiting and supporting moderate centrist candidates as part of strategy to take control of the House. Well, yes, they might just save their jobs and save the Democrat majority in the process. The Blue Dog Coalition, that was in 1995, after Democrats lost power in the most stunning electoral defeat of that era. Originally, most were older white Southern men. Their names were inspired by the iconic Yellow-Eyed Blue Dog by the artist George Renew. A post-Reconstruction has started in the South, would rather vote for a Yellow Dog than a Republican, but the 1997 Democrats said the Yellow Dog was being choked by blue, an extreme side of both parties, hence the name the Blue Dogs. Oh, well, anyway. The principal group was fiscally conservative, national security minded. That national security minded thing has been placed upside down, like the proverbial time, what is it called? Anyway, we used to have those. Anyway, they put sand in them there and so forth and so on. Anyway, the Blue Dogs will look a lot different in 2019 than they did in 1995. They include Norman as younger, some veterans there, led by an Asian American woman who served in the Pentagon. And I just won her re-election in the purple district there in Florida. Supports both gun rights, gay rights. Well, that's nothing new there. The makeup of the coalition has changed. Stephanie Murphy told me it's not your Southern Democrat Blue Dog anymore. Well, no doubt about that. And Murphy and her co-chair, Luis Correa, he's from California, Tom O'Halloran from Arizona, are growing a coalition, they hope. And Max Rose, Afghanistan veterans. Abigail Spanberg, she's in Virginia. And the former Utah Mayor Ben McAdams, a theory of the cases, and writing like a lawyer here, his competence, pragmatism, experience in public service are attributes of voters crave in the age of Trump. Republicans have conceded huge territory in the Senate, Murphy says, by banning fiscal responsibility. They had to ban fiscal responsibility because they would have not been able to pass their $1.2 trillion tax packet for the corporations. That in itself, you don't hear the word fiscal conservative. And one of the things I always understand, the so-called fiscal conservative was something that they used against Barack Obama. The idea of the deficit, that is a flippable. It's just something you put out there, and you talk about the deficit. And if you look at the history of the Republican Party, going back to Reagan, blew out the deficit there. They used to talk about balanced budgets. You don't hear that anymore. States, by their constitutions, balance their budgets. If you look at particular examples in California, Governor Brown did a very good task of bringing California's fiscal case into order. Same as in Minnesota, Mark Dayton brought it back in order. The reason the Republicans bring it out of order is you can't have massive tax cuts and then at the same time low revenue. And that's based upon your economy. If your economy goes south, your revenue goes down. And this so-called trickle-down offer-lapper theory doesn't work. And this is what you see more and more happening under Trump. We thought we'd bring this in. This mentions the progressive wing, far-left Democrats. These aren't far-left Democrats. As our buddy Alexandriaocasio-cortez has a district just miles from Rose, but gets dramatically more coverage in part because of her willingness to oppose the party leadership. Well, she did and she didn't. She did running in the minute she got the seat, and she hasn't got in it yet, but she supported Nancy Pelosi. Some little arithmetic here. 64% of the 42 seats Democrats flipped. That was in 2018, will be held by members of the Blue Dogs, a moderate new Democratic coalition. Only 27% of those seats will be held by members of the Progressive Caucus. And of the 20 districts now held by Democrats that favored Trump, 11 are so-called Blue Dogs, or New Democrats, only 3 are Progressives. Well, yeah. Some of those districts were very, very red in the first place. Ocasio-Cortez won by almost 80%. Rose got 53% and was happy to get it. Again, this is farcical there. O'Halloran, let's see what's his. Our district have a different look of them and a different face of them, and we recognize that, and the caucus has to recognize that. Well, no doubt about it. The risk for Democrats is that, the squeaky the squeaky wheels that went up getting the grease, and the loudest voices will become the voice of the party. Well, so folks, pragmatism has never been and never will be a quote-unquote sexy message. Well, but these members were elected in part because of their pragmatism. If we look at pragmatism, an example of pragmatism, not in the U.S. body politic, but in France, on the Macron. Macron literally put his own party together, came in as a pragmatic type, was a former I think he's a venture capitalist. It doesn't matter which one he was, but he was in the financial sector. And of course, he was also in the last administration there of Hollande. But he came with a new face. He came with the word pragmatism. And this is part of the problem with pragmatism is pragmatism in this particular economic setup. Globalized economy. Your economy is not isolated, depending obviously on which nation it is, but you depend on what other nations do. And if China underperforms, you will have problems, as what's happening in France. Looking at their, let's see if we can get that. Yeah. This is by the IHS market. We'll have those. We'll have this report on numbers, man. It's dropped to 49.3 from 54.2. You need 50 points to be up there. France has been doing rather well lately. And now France has got problems. But if you look here, the protests have been a major factor for growth. To slow from what's a very resilient picture before. That's from Dr. Chris Williamson. He's at the market, noting that tourism and leisure sectors were particularly hard hit. In addition, France is, of course, for growth of only 0.2% in the final quarter, be Q4, the central bank estimate, and down from the 0.4% the previous quarter. So in other words, France was never in a position. And this will have a lot to do with the so-called Blue Dog Democrats. Blue Dog Democrats, centralist Democrats, Clinton had them around. And when Clinton inherited basically a recession in the early 90s, and then the dot-com boom, you could have those types of Democrats around. The same thing that happened when the contract on America appeared. Those things usually only appear most of the time in the American body politic when in fact there are economic good times. And you can say basically this is what happened with DJ Trump. For most of the nation after the Depression of 2008, 2009, the economy came out, the automobile industry, President Obama restored it, the GMs of the world, they were slated to go out. Willard Romney didn't care. He said, forget it. They are gone. They're history. And that whole supply chain would have collapsed. But those people were back. They were making moderate progress. And Trump made the whole point about, well, these numbers are not that great. Well, now, yes, unemployment is down, but at the same time, as H would say, you have a lot of part-time positions out there, and people are putting 2 and 3 part-times together to make one full-time, so-called ends meet. So you got a lot of that going on. And at the same time, jobs are being created by the Googles and et cetera of the world. But you have the Fords and the GMs of the world laying off and redoing, and GMs going to electric cars. So they'll be hiring more programmers and code jockeys than automotive engineers. That's just a fact of life, and they will go the engine and some other things. Things do change, and this also change what will go with the Blue Dogs. The Blue Dogs challenges, let me finish up the article here. They're pitching moderation, compromise, bipartisanship. The Republicans really aren't that much on that. We're going to get the farm bill. It'll be signed. That's a bipartisan thing. The crime bill, but that's something that's been going on for a very, very, very long time in the making. And finally, it was picked up by the old farmer from Iowa, Senator Grassley. And of course, Grassley voted against the farm bill. We did a special program on this farm bill, inviting you to tune in to it, where we actually went into what the farm bill was about. And it has the food supplement in there, supplemental food part in there, which used to euphemistically be known as food stamps. That is part of it. And would that be a work requirement? We went in depth on that, and also that work requirement has its ugly head in Medicaid. We did a special program on it. We invite you to tune into it, and we spotlighted Kentucky and to a lesser extent Arkansas, and we've done programs before in Indiana. So we've been on Medicaid. So those are some of the issues that these characters have to address, even if the Democratic leadership gives its centrist and moderate members the opportunity and the cover they need to be independent and focus on their districts. Period. Democrats must decide whether they want to assuage their angerish elements or govern from the middle and keep the power. Well, they're not going to govern from the middle. A lot of where they govern from is dictated by the economy, literally. So let's see. I think we have time to get in California. California is setting its primary, it's changing, I should say, its primary. And this will cause some interesting situations where people will declare, the Democrats that is, Inside expecting 6 to 10 to launch their exploratory next month in January. Remember the old Capitol down in downstate Illinois where we governed and kicked off Barack Obama's campaign, doing 216 Democrat candidates like the Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders waited until April to announce their White House bids. That was of 2015. You probably will not get that this time. They'll be out there as quickly as they can get out. And if we look at it, Russia will likely announce early, if you're expected to enter in 2020. I don't know if this is the one about California or not. I guess it's not. But anyway, you have Joe Biden. And how they list these is very interesting itself. You have Bernie Sanders, who is number one on the list. And these characters are listing everybody and his mother. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, which the Boston Globe said, bye-bye, Elizabeth. Kristen Gillibrand, Amy Klobuchar. It's interesting. Amy Klobuchar actually running for president, or she's running for vice president. She'll be in Iowa, be strong there. And forget about Garcetti in Los Angeles and Bloomberg. Period. And what you got, Julian Castro, he's running for vice president. You can forget about that. And the debates, Democratic National Committee, they're in Tom Perez there, how they're going to set up these debates. The shift to so-called Super Tuesday, that'll be in March of 2020, will change how campaigns structure their efforts and require tough decisions. And competing in California, California's a very expensive state to compete in. No doubt about it. Reshuffling means California voters who... California traditionally had been one of the last. Remember, Robert Kennedy was killed in California in June, and it was on to... I believe Indiana was the last one out there. And from a pollster who worked out of San Francisco, it's a big deal for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 campaign. Traditional schedule has the small states, more affordable states. Retail politics, California is not like that. So competing in will be very expensive because you're literally competing all the way from San Diego up to the Oregon border. So, I mean, you really got in Los Angeles and some of those markets, the amount of money you're going to need to be competitive in California is going to knock so many people out before they begin. That's from James Dimmers, who was a co-chair of Barack Obama's California campaign in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a relatively cheap state to be in, and so is Iowa, actually. Two states are combined, that's New Hampshire and Iowa. 68 delegates. California awarded 475. Kamala Harris wants to get a lot of those delegates. Secretary of State there, Alex Padilla, made it clear in an interview, this is Reuters, Democrats have complained that candidates are keen to the state to raise money. That's true, because if a June primary was all over by the time California started out. Places like New Hampshire, South Carolina comes after New Hampshire, were forced them to limit their appeal to one factor of the Democratic Party or another. Michael Sarasso, I think that's it, who ran Bernie's campaign in California. The primary will be a referendum on the state's political priorities. Do you support the Democratic California Progressive agenda? This isn't the only California that reshaped the nomination. Delegate-rich states like Texas and North Carolina are scheduled to hold primaries on Super Tuesday. North Carolina was a state, and South Carolina both were states that Jesse Jackson did very well in. Texas, for Democrats, would even be, say, for Beto O'Rourke, would be something there. But he'd also do very well, very good in California. It's a state for him. Jeff Lake, a Democratic strategist in Iowa, who worked for Al Gore and agrees that early voting in California will make the initial primary states even more relevant, as those voters will look to identify front runners. Well, yes and no. If you spend a lot of money in California, you are and you get a turbo showing in Iowa, odds are you're going to do well on Super Tuesday. Well, but Carmen Harris in particular, that's a known factor in California, would look to get her share of votes there. How she would do in Iowa, she's got some problems there because Beto O'Rourke is there. Bernie's going to get his share of votes in Iowa. Beto O'Rourke is the kind of candidate to do very well in Iowa. And watch out for Amy Klobuchar because she's right next door. Let me just check what time here. Okay, we're not bad. We'll do Nancy Wilson. Lastly, there's a song out there that, let me see if I can find it. I'll probably do it tomorrow night. It was in the 40s, and it was a very, very popular song, and been talked about by a lot of people lately. It actually been banned from some places. Let's go to San Diego very quickly here. The San Diego Tribune, Union Tribune there. I don't know if what we have. Well, Apple bringing 1,000 jobs to San Diego is one of the big things. Nothing spectacular there. So we'll go back here. We'll go to Nancy Wilson, dead at 81. She was an interesting jazz singer, award-winning singer. Blues and R&B, died in Pioneer Town, California. She's 81. Her manager said resisted the label of a jazz singer for much of her career, although jazz was a form to which she returned time and time again. A song stylist, as she told the Post, is my essence. Weave it together there. Two greatest influences in her life were Jimmy Scott and Diana Washington. Those of us who have been around remember that. Singing was once regal and variable. She inspired two generations of singing. Patti LaBelle, we know her. Anita Baker. Classic sound. Freeland told me San Jose Mercury, period there. Jazz historian and critic Will Frywald called her, Miss Wilson, a former president in pop, jazz, and blues. No doubt she was. in the 80s and the 90s, but she did a lot of commercials. Also, she was interpreter of compositions as varied as George Gershwin's Someone to Watch Over Me, Marvin Gaye's Come to Get This, Van Morrison's Moondance, George Michael's Careless Whisper. She transformed some pop hits, Our Day Will Come, Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. She became a commissar of secular music in her teens and left Central State, now at Wilford University, to pursue a lucrative nightclub touring act in her native Ohio. She worked with Cannonball Adderley. We remember him. And she did a lot of commercials here. For a period, she became one of Capitol Records' biggest selling stars, second only to the Beatles, in addition to $30,000 a week for concerts and gaming. She and her first husband, drummer Kenny Dennis, began a management in music publishing and TV production company that grossed $1 million a year. She also did commercials from everybody from Thunderbird Wine, remember Thunderbird, to Campbell's Soup. She later worked in commercials for companies ranging from Stroh's Beer out of Detroit, and Johnson & Johnson's baby products, the Infinity car. She was there. She became a regular on the old Flip Wilson show, Carol Burnett's, Andy Williams. When he had a show, she appeared in the 60s in shows as I Spy. Bill Cosby was there. And she later, 2 decades later, she played Claire Huxtable. That was a mother on The Cosby Show. She was born in Chillicothe, Ohio, on the 20th of February, 1937. Grew up in Columbus, where her father was an iron worker. Her mother was a domestic. Her parents divorced, but she lived within blocks. They lived within blocks of each other. When I was 4, I knew I had a volume, she told the Chicago Tribune, and she definitely did have a volume, with Capitol to Nat King Cole, Peggy Lee, remember all those people, Cannonball Adderley, and some of her releases, Today and Tomorrow, Forever, Once in My Life, and I'm a Woman in 1970. With the luscious interpretation of Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, the Philadelphia Sound. Her first marriage and divorce, and she married Reverend Wiley Burton. He died in 2008. Survivors include a son from the first marriage, 2 daughters from a second marriage, etc., etc. She worked with jazz pianists Ramsey Lewis and Hank Jones. She also put out a Christmas album. We'll have more of that later. Reflecting on her career and the pressure she faced, she told the Kansas City Star in 2007 that she always took complete artistic responsibility for her music. Never have I gone anywhere and said, make me somebody. She said, I came here as somebody. Consequently, you can't turn me away from what I believe. These are my songs I like, and I've never recorded anything that totally wasn't my choice. Very good there from her. Let's go to the basketball scores here. The Lakers were at the Rockets in Houston. Rockets won 126-111. The Clippers were in San Antonio. Spurs 125-87 for the Clippers. The Bulls were at the Magic. They evidently didn't have any Magic. The Magic 97-91 over the Bulls. And finally, the Mavericks were in Phoenix. And that's a team could be on its way out of town. 99 for the Suns to 89 for the Mavericks. And I don't know if we're going to have any time to mess around with soccer scores tonight. No. We'll do the Hockey League. National Hockey League. Always have a little introductory here. Anyway, the Coyotes and Sabres. Sabres 3-1. The Kings and Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets 4-1 was the final there. The Hurricanes and Canadiens. It was Canadiens 6-4. The Maple Leafs and Lightning was the Lightning 4-1 in that contest. The Canucks and Predators in an overtime. It was the Predators 4-3. The Panthers and Wild. It was the Wild 5-1. The Oilers and Jets of Winnipeg. It was the Jets. Another overtime going on there. Let me just make sure of that. Okay. Jets are 5-4 in that one. And Stars and Sharks. Hellacious name there with the Sharks. 3-2. And we got to get Emerson College. We'll do Emerson College tomorrow night. They have a very good poll here showing that DJ Trump. The headline is here: disapproval matches his all-time low. Americans are optimistic about the new year despite belt tightening for the holidays. Not a good deal for consumer economy. But we'll get that on the week that was. That will be tomorrow night. And we visit, as we usually do on Saturday morning with Uncle Carl Robe and see what Uncle Carl has to say. He's disparaging our own Stacey Abrams. But we'll get to that tomorrow morning. And a final word about pragmatism. We'll look at France. We'll see what the Yellow Jackets do. Incidentally, we did a special on the Yellow Jackets. The Yellow Jackets are out. Those are the protesters in France. A broad coalition of people. And that was on BR, Boston Red on the World. We'll have more programs there. And hopefully this weekend we'll get another open source report out. Voice depending on it there. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on a Saturday morning.